The victim's body was removed from the apartment and taken to the
Philadelphia police were searching for a sexual predator who had climbed to the upper floors of buildings to attack his victims. Geographic profilers predicted that the perpetrator lived or worked near his victims. But when identical crimes occurred 1,700 miles away in Colorado, investigators either had a perpetrator with a very long commute, or they had to rethink their assumptions. Rittenhouse Square in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. On sunny days, the park is filled with sunbathers and joggers. Many are students at the nearby University of Pennsylvania. In 1998, Shannon Schieber lived just a few blocks from the square. She was 23 and a graduate student at the university's prestigious Wharton School of Business.
She was pursuing a PhD program in insurance, but always interested in a challenge. She was also simultaneously pursuing a degree in finance.
To her parents, Vicki and Syl Schieber, Shannon was all they could have hoped for in a daughter.
Shannon was a very happy person. She was inquisitive. She wanted to learn about everything, always a bundle of energy, 1,000 questions. Every time you went somewhere, she had to know, how did this happen, or what made that do it that way?
She was extremely bright. She was competitive. In her writing, she wrote because she wanted to win ribbons. But she had an extremely caring side about her also. She had a more diverse group of friends, I think, than almost anybody I've ever known.
Shannon excelled at everything she did. Her senior year in high school, she was president of the student body when another president came by to announce he was running for re-election. When attending undergraduate school at Duke University, she was president of the freshman class and co-captain of the equestrian team.
She graduated in 3 years with a triple major in math and economics and in philosophy.
From there, Shannon moved to Philadelphia to attend graduate school. She rented a second-floor apartment near Rittenhouse Square because the area was considered safe. On the night of May 7, 1998, Shannon spent the evening at home. The next day, Shannon didn't meet her friends as planned, so they went to Shannon's apartment and forced open her door. Shannon's friend broke the news to the Schiebers.
And she just told me we needed to get there right away and that something bad had happened. I said, Sam, you have to tell me. I have to know. She told us that she was dead.
She had run a bath. There was a paper, so we knew that she was studying.
The killer had somehow managed to climb up to a second-floor balcony and enter through a sliding glass door. There was evidence of a struggle. Books had been knocked off the shelves on one side of her bed. She was strangled and sexually assaulted. Her camera, necklace, and pen were stolen. Blood, presumably that of the killer, was found on the bed, the wall, and on the outside balcony.
We assumed that he was either bitten or somehow he got cut.
The blood on the balcony railing was proof he had left this way. Police knew the perpetrator was experienced in gaining entrance to upper-floor apartments, but they would need more information than that to find him. Shannon Schieber was a brilliant student with a bright future that ended tragically on May 7, 1998, when she was robbed and murdered in her Philadelphia apartment. There had been no witnesses, and none of the police leads revealed anything of value. After investigating for 8 months, police were at a standstill. The first break in the case came from an unlikely source.
And then that's looking from her.
An anonymous informant called the Philadelphia Inquirer newspaper to leak some confidential and highly embarrassing information about the Shannon Schieber murder investigation to the press.
This person said it's a shame about Shannon Schieber because the department has blown off 2 earlier cases that were part of this pattern, and if we'd picked it up earlier, maybe we could have headed this off. I'm virtually certain it was a senior police officer.
Investigative reporters from the newspaper dug a little deeper, uncovering evidence that the police covered up several earlier rape cases in order for the city's crime statistics to look better than they really were.
Philadelphia police had a long-standing practice of deep-sixing sexual assault complaints of at least 20 years. It wouldn't be coded as a true crime, it was just taken off the books entirely.
2 of those crimes were rape cases never reported that happened a year before Shannon Schieber's murder with the same M.O. All of the victims were young females who lived alone and had no boyfriends or animals.
Our reporting showed that typically it was the most powerless victims who were subjected to this treatment. Homeless women, African American women, women who had no clout to protest.
One of these earlier victims got a brief look at her assailant. A police sketch artist put together this composite. He was described as a tall, slender, light-complected male, well-groomed in his mid-20s.
There was a task force created. There were undercover police, plainclothes policemen brought in. The composite was circulated.
We knew we were dealing with someone very agile, very thin, probably very, very athletic. We had checked basically all the athletic clubs in the city and surrounding area.
In July of 1999, Boyle and Perry turned to FBI profilers for help. Based on knowledge gained from prior offenders, the profilers believed that the rapist was familiar with the neighborhood, comfortable being out late at night, and had probably been involved in other peeping Tom or voyeuristic activities in the past. 15 months after Shannon Schieber's murder, the Center City rapist claimed his 6th victim. This time, he removed 14 screws from a set of burglar bars to gain access to a ground floor apartment.
We were horribly saddened, and we talked to the parents of the young woman who was attacked, and they called us, they reached out to us, and we chatted at some length with both the father and the mother. But it gave us hope at the same time. We were devastated that now there was a chance that someday the guy who caught Shannon would be in prison, and that was always very important to us.
After the 6th attack, detectives Boyle and Perry took another step. Boyle had seen an episode of Forensic Files on Court TV about a series of sexual assaults in Louisiana solved with geographic profiling. So Boyle contacted Kim Rossmo, the investigator who appeared in that episode.
We know as a basic principle that offenders commit their crimes close to home. We also know they do it in areas that they're comfortable with, their comfort zone.
Rossmo surveyed Philadelphia's Center City by helicopter and on foot. Then he entered Shannon's address and those of the 5 other victims into his geographic profiling program.
And then the computer system generates for us, after a number of calculations, up to 1 million, what's called a jeopardy surface. A jeopardy surface is a 3-dimensional probability surface showing us the most likely location of offender residence.
Orange represents the areas where the Center City rapist is most likely to live or work. The police flooded those areas with sketches of the rapist, but ultimately, it didn't matter. The Center City rapist and now murderer never struck again. At least, not in Philadelphia. Shortly after the Center City rapist claimed his 6th victim in Philadelphia, the crimes mysteriously stopped. Police had a number of theories. The perpetrator struck only during the spring and summer. When the summer of 2000 came and went without an incident, police feared he had fled Philadelphia and might never be caught. Investigators suspected the perpetrator was a college student who lived in Philadelphia during the summer but went to school out of town. What they didn't know was 1,700 miles away, in Fort Collins, Colorado, there was a similar rapist committing crimes in the exact same way.
The suspect was entering by removing screens and climbing in through the windows. And then once inside, the suspect was taking control of the victim while the victim was sleeping.
The attacker struck 5 times during the spring and summer of 2001. He pulled pillowcases over his victims' heads and assaulted them. During the 5th attack, he made a mistake. He had entered the victim's apartment by way of a 2nd-floor balcony. Crime Lab Supervisor Jeff Sabota took a portion of the balcony railing back to his lab and sprayed it with ninhydrin, a chemical used to uncover fingerprints on porous surfaces. The ninhydrin reacts with skin oil, causing fingerprint ridges to turn purple. An hour later, he got the results. 3 perfect prints.
Put his palms here, placed his left hand, leaving his left thumbprint in left ring and left little finger, and then jumped over.
Fort Collins mailed photographs of the prints along with a description of the attacks to police departments all across the country, asking for assistance. The letter caught the attention of a police clerk in Philadelphia.
She thought of the Center City rapist, which he was called at the time, and she contacted the Special Victims Unit, Detective Latour. Detective Latour then contacted the Fort Collins Police Department.
When DNA from the rape test kits in Colorado were compared to blood found in Shannon Schieber's apartment, the DNA matched.
When they called back to say that they had, in fact, done a comparison and that the samples match, it was overwhelming.
I think there was this amazing sense of hope that now this guy was going to be caught.
But why did the rapist leave Philadelphia for Colorado, and how would police catch him? To find out, investigators needed to identify everyone who lived in Philadelphia during that crime spree, who were later in Colorado during the crimes there.
Every person that have the 2 cities in common, we would want to talk to.
Computer crime expert Lieutenant Ed Monahan asked a college friend, Bill News, to help with the search. News happened to work for LexisNexis, an information retrieval service containing more than 30,000 public databases. Not all of the search parameters will be revealed in this program.
A lot of it was geographic, and I really don't want to go into it further than that.
They culled through credit bureau records and found 319 males who had been making financial transactions in Philadelphia and then did the same in Fort Collins, Colorado. They further narrowed the search by looking for males between the ages of 20 and 30 years old who had been living in or around the areas of the Philadelphia attacks.
A zip code was a short and easy way of identifying a geographic area.
Monahan got the list down to 83 names, which he immediately sent to police in Colorado. Those names were added to a list of more than 800 suspects the Colorado police gathered. Before they all could be checked, there was a 7th assault. Police needed to work quickly before there was an 8th. By now, police knew that the Center City rapist in Philadelphia was now in Colorado, committing similar crimes there. There had been a total of 1 murder and 12 sexual assaults, 5 in Philadelphia, 7 more in Fort Collins, Colorado. In September 2001, Colorado police were methodically investigating potential suspects and running DNA tests when they received this letter.
I'm sorry, but I can't let you catch me yet. Not in Colorado. I don't even like it here. I'm not a fan of cold weather. I don't even like going up to Fort Collins anymore. You guys are everywhere. I admit, I want to get caught. I don't like what I do. It keeps me at a distance from people, and I can't talk to anyone. It gets lonely.
The letter contained details of the crimes only the perpetrator could have known. But it didn't contain any DNA or fingerprints. Ultimately, Detective Cochran concluded that the rapist was trying to sidetrack the investigation.
We allowed the suspect to lead us in a different direction because of this letter, that ultimately we might miss somebody.
Colorado police had received more than 1,000 tips. One call was from a woman who said she had dated a man who resembled the police sketch. The man's name was Troy Graves, a name that appeared on the list of suspects generated by Philadelphia police computer experts. Graves had worked for a bank in Philadelphia, not far from the victims' homes. After the last attack in Philadelphia, Graves joined the Air Force and was sent to Fort Warren in Colorado. Graves lived in Fort Collins, just a short distance from the Colorado crime scenes.
The investigator was told by the girlfriend that Troy liked to take walks late at night, that he had trouble sleeping, that there might have been a prior sexual abuse history.
Graves had once been reprimanded for peeping into a woman's room on the Air Force Base. And he was thin and athletic, physically capable of climbing up to second-story windows. Detective Neil Hysom contacted Troy Graves and asked him to come in for an interview.
He was very well-spoken, very polite, so I was a little taken aback by that, but he did look and match the physical features.
Hysom asked the usual questions that had been asked of hundreds of other suspects.
I asked him if he would be willing to take a polygraph exam. Again, this was something I could use to exclude him, and he was definite on his answer to that. He told me not right now.
He then asked Graves if he would agree to be fingerprinted.
And his response was that felt weird to him.
Nevertheless, Graves was taken to the police fingerprint expert, who ran a complete set of prints, paying close attention to the little finger, ring finger, and thumb on the left hand.
Once Miss Fulton had rolled his fingerprints, I could tell by her reaction when she rolled them that she knew.
Troy Graves' fingerprints matched the prints from the 5th victim in Colorado. And when Graves' blood was analyzed, his DNA matched the blood left at Shannon Schieber's apartment. Troy Graves' multi-city rampage was over. Police and prosecutors believed that Graves' motive was sexual assault, but Shannon Schieber fought back, somehow cutting or biting Graves, which produced the blood on her bed and walls. Shannon was the only victim murdered. When confronted with the forensic evidence, Graves confessed. He later pled guilty and was convicted. At his sentencing hearing in Colorado, several of his victims got a chance to confront their attacker.
I hate you, Troy Graves. With every ounce of my being, I hate you. How dare you ever think you could violate someone the way you did me?
And now you are going to pay. Your future holds not only a complete absence of freedom, but nights of getting raped and toyed with in ways that even someone as sick as you can't imagine yet.
Troy Graves was sentenced to life in prison.
I had given up hope a long time ago they'd ever find him. I really did. I really did. But it was good not to have any more victims, and that's a personal, very personal feeling. As a mother of a victim, definitely.
Shannon's parents keep her room as it was when she was alive, filled with her championship ribbons, her books, her photos of family and friends.
We were extremely close, and to think of somebody who was so alive and so part of you who's now gone so suddenly, it's just horrendous.
The hunt for Shannon's killer was a classic needle in the haystack investigation. Its solution, solid detective work, behavioral and geographical profiling, and computer forensics.
Here's the locations of the offenses. The bank that Graves worked at, the location of his girlfriend's home, his first residence.
The assaults all took place along routes that Graves would have traveled from his 2 rented apartments to his girlfriend's home and to work.
These crimes are usually of the more serious nature, and any edge that you can give to help the investigators, great. We like to think of geographic profiling as just one more tool in their toolkit. I think it's important to realize that no profile can solve a crime. You need physical evidence and witness or a confession to do that. And it's going to be the detective in charge that solves it. We just play a small support role, but to the degree that we can assist in helping them focus or understand the crime or prioritizing suspects, then you feel very good.
Computers don't commit crimes, and computers don't solve crimes. Detectives solve crimes. And even in this instance, I think it's a really great example of detective work and technology.
Powers of the DNA evidence today, and the specialists that you can go to, from the geographical profiler to the FBI profiler to the use of the computers. It's changed how we do our job, how we do an investigation. Forensic science is where it's at today.